Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter-Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Bob Bailey and Virginia-Gregg in an episode of Let George Do It from 75 years ago, May 31st, 1975, the story of the island in the lake. And we thank you for tuning in on this Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's the 151st day of the year, 214 days remaining till we get to 2024. The first U.S. copyright law enacted on this date in 1790, protecting books, maps, and other original materials. 1884, John Harvey Kellogg patented cornflakes. And that's an interesting story if you've never heard about what cornflakes, well, I'm not going to get into that here, but look it up. 1889, heavy rains caused the South Fork Dam to collapse, sending 20 million tons of water into Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Over 2,200 people killed, the town nearly destroyed. The hull of the Titanic launched in Belfast, Ireland on this date in 1911. At the ceremony, a White Star Line employee claimed not even God himself could sink the ship. Well, we know how that came out. 1927, the last Ford Model T rolled off the assembly line after a production run of 15 million vehicles. The British Expeditionary Forces withdrew from Belgian sector of Dunkirk on this date in 1940 and returned home.
On the station, I watched the men climbing into the long waiting trains. It was astounding to walk along carriage after carriage full of soldiers and to find in each one silence. For most of the men were fast asleep where they sat. All the way along the line, the people of England stood at the level crossings and in the back gardens to wave to them. And so the men of the BEF came home.
Reporter Bernard Stubbs as the troops withdrew. 1962, former Gestapo official Adolf Eichmann hung in Israel. 1969, John Lennon, Yoko Ono recorded Give Peace a Chance, the first single recorded by a solo Beatle, recorded from their hotel bed. 97-year-old Alberta Martin, one of the last widows of a U.S. Civil War veteran, died on this date in 2004. She had married Confederate veteran William Martin in 1927. She was 21, he was 81. In 2005, Vanity Fair magazine revealed former Federal Bureau of Investigation Associate Director Mark Felt was the Watergate informant Deep Throat. 2013, the asteroid 1998 QE2 and its moon made their closest approach to Earth for the next 2 centuries, back in 2013. Also in 2013, a record-breaking 2.6-mile-wide tornado struck El Reno, Oklahoma. 8 fatalities, 150 injuries. Other deaths on this date include psychologist Timothy Leary, the LSD guy. Also musician Tito Puente. Arlene Francis, such a delightful lady, a great contestant, a good actress, but probably best known for her runs on What's My Line and her run on the syndicated To Tell the Truth. And Gene Stapleton, all passing away on this date in history. Birthdays on this date include poet Walt Whitman, Pope Pius XI, Fred Allen passing away on this date. By the way, check our podcasts. You will see in our podcast that 1-hour retrospective that NBC did in their biography and sound. It is delightful. Also born on this date was Fred Allen. Also Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, actor Don Amici, singer Johnny Paycheck, who told the boss to take this job and shove it, and Vicki Sue Robinson, still turning the beat around. A number of great people born on this day. Turning 93 today, Clint Eastwood.
Go ahead. Make my day.
From Sudden Impact, Clint Eastwood, 93 today. From Peter, Paul, and Mary, Peter Yarrow, 85 today. Lenny Welch, Since I Fell for You. Lenny, that was off, I know. Lenny Welch, 85 today. From Cagney and Lacey, Sharon Glass is 80 years old. And Joe Namath, football legend, 80 years old today. And also pantyhose legend.
Once I hurt my knee trying to make a tackle that a lot of people thought I shouldn't have been trying to make. Well, let me tell you, if you put that uniform on, you're supposed to be a football player, and you've got to be ready to go all the way. That's just the way I am. I guess that's why I use Brute. I like the smell. I like the way it works, the way it lasts.
Brute by Fabergé. After the game, after anything, Brute goes all the way.
If you're not going to go all the way, man, why go at all?
Now, see, that's what you would expect from a quarterback, the Brute lotion commercial. But Joe Namath did a commercial for Beauty Mist pantyhose. And it started at the feet, and it started doing a slow pan all the way up, and then you got to the face. And Joe Namath said, if these can make my pants look good, if these can make my legs look good, think what they'll do for yours. That was the sell. Let's see, Joe Namath, 80 years old today, now hawking Medicare supplements. From Platoon, Tom Berenger is 74. He was in Falcon Crest and Gonzo in Trapper John M.D. Gregory Harrison, 73. Comedian Chris Elliott, Bob Elliott's son, he was also on Letterman. Chris Elliott, 63. From Back to the Future and Red Dawn, Leah Thompson, 62. Singer-songwriter Corey Hart is 61. Oh, Bullseye and Daredevil, Colin Farrell, is 47. And Brooke Shields is 58.
I took her hand in mine, and we went out of the ruined place. And as the morning mists had risen long ago when I left the forge, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me. I saw no shadow of another parting from her. Reading is to the mind what Calvin's are to the body.
Calvin Klein jeans.
A very, very young Brooke Shields. She is now 58 years old. Those just a few of the people who celebrate the 31st day of May as their birthday. If this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you!
From 75 years ago, May 31st, 1948, Bob Bailey, Virginia-Gregg, Let George Do It. That's up next on this Wednesday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Classic Radio Theater on a Wednesday here on your favorite station. Thanks to Robert and Susie who bought some more copies from us. And the Buy Me a Coffee doesn't get you anything unless you take advantage of one of the special offers there on the webpage. But quite frankly, I thank Susie, I thank Robert. They are strong supporters of our program, and your help for just a little coffee would be nice. That's at classicradio.stream. Helps us acquire new shows like Bob Bailey, Virginia-Gregg, Let George Do It. From 75 years ago, May 31st, 1948, and the episode is entitled The Island in the Lake.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invite you to Let George Do It. Another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice. Danger is my stock and trade. If it's something you can't handle and it must remain strictly confidential, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, I've worked very hard to get what I want out of life. A successful marriage. A husband who's highly respected in the community. Everything. Now, by one of her foolish whims, my own sister threatens to destroy all that. She's been missing for 2 days and must be found without any publicity. That's why I'm calling on you.
Calling on you instead of the police. Phone me this afternoon when my husband is sure not to be here. Tuxedo Lake, 673. I'll be at your office any time you say. signed Edith Wilder.
Tuxedo Lake, huh?
Uh-huh.
That little body of water's become very fashionable lately.
Well, I don't want to sound grasping, George, but if the Wilders live on the exclusive island in Tuxedo Lake...
Yeah, I know, Brooksy. The fee could be a thing of beauty. All right, call Mrs. Wilder for an appointment at the office tomorrow morning.
After thinking it over, Mr. Valentine, I decided to bring Angela's husband with me.
Oh, Edith, you shouldn't have hired this man's services. Angela is free to do anything she chooses now.
Leave this to me, Walter. This is my sister's husband, Mr. Phillistin.
Phillistin?
How do you do?
My assistant, Miss Brooks.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Do you mind if she takes some notes? So far, I'm in the dark about this whole thing.
Anytime you're ready.
It'll take just a few not very pleasant words. Angela's disappeared again. This time, there's every reason to believe it'll cause a scandal none of us will ever live down.
Oh, Edith.
Mrs. Wilder, just how old is your sister?
Well, she's 2 years younger than I am, 42. You'll get all the information you need, and I'm sure you'll know just how to proceed.
You may as well tell him the whole truth, Edith. As long as you've gone this far.
Walter.
Do you want me to put all this down, George?
No, Brooksy. I think we'll get to the point right now. Look, Mrs. Wilder, what about the whole truth?
Oh, I wanted to avoid that.
You see, Mr. Valentine, I'm Angela's third husband.
Take it down from here, Brooksy.
Right, George.
The third man she's married through a matrimonial agency.
And now corresponding with another man before she's even divorced from Walter.
Oh, I see.
No matter what happens, this must never come out. You don't know how people are out at Tuxedo Lake. Even if my own husband found this out...
When I put the word confidential in my ad, Mrs. Wilder, I meant it. Now, Mr. Phillistin, are you sure your wife was corresponding with another man?
Yes, I found a letter from him and his picture in a bureau drawer. I tore it up right in front of her face and threw it in the fire.
Well, that wasn't very smart. It might have helped you get a divorce without paying through the nose.
Oh, I realize that now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, last Monday, I had lunch with Angela. She said she'd settle for $20,000 in cash in our house on Tuxedo Island.
And you mean you just shelled out $20,000 like that?
Yes, that same afternoon. It seemed the easiest way. She threatened to sue me for desertion if I left her and take all the money I have if she took me to court and tied up my contracts. And, I'm a builder, you know, and it would cost me much more than that.
I just want you to bring Angela back here before she causes a scandal that will wreck all our lives.
Mr. Phillistin, would you recognize the man in that picture if you ever saw him?
I can't be sure. I suppose so. I was so upset I don't even remember the name if there was one.
George, don't you think we ought to get the name of that marriage club?
I ought to know that. That's the way I met her. It's the Shelby Friendship Club. Meet your companion for life.
The important thing is this, Mr. Valentine. Walter is staying with me and my husband on the island. So far, we only told Richard that Angela is off visiting some friends. It must remain that way.
Okay, I'll do my best. You'd better give me the keys to your place, Phillistin. Maybe I can pick up a lead there.
Here you are. That's that. When a woman is just over 40, well over 60...
This is no time for you to feel sorry for yourself, Walter.
Hey, Brooksy, take these keys. I'll meet you on the landing at Tuxedo Lake in a couple of hours. Then we'll go over to Mr. Phillistin's house.
Okay, George.
Well, what are you going to do, Mr. Valentine?
Pay a visit to the Shelby Friendship Club. See what I can find out about Angela's unknown suitor. Now, Mr. Selby, I'm afraid I'm not mistaken.
I can't believe it, Mr. Valentine. Not Angela Kramer Holloway, Phillistin.
Amazing how you remember the names of all her husbands. But, of course, you've been providing her with them for years.
Young man, I don't like your cynical tone.
So sorry. I guess I got out of the wrong side of the bed this morning.
The Friendship Club serves a very definite purpose.
Yeah, I know.
Bringing together people with identical interests has proven much more successful than aimless courtships and haphazard romances. Our motto is meet your companion for life.
Such as Mrs. Angela Kramer Holloway Phillistin.
Of course, there are exceptions.
All right,
but...
let's skip the spiel, Cupid. It stands to reason that if Angela got the romantic urge again, she'd patronize the Friendship Club, which gave us such excellent service in the past.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir. I know of no correspondence between Mrs. Phillistin and any of my clients.
You sure about that?
In fact, Mr. Valentine, I tore up Angela's card in our files. After a year, I assume she was blissfully united with that nice elderly Mr. Phillistin.
Well, don't get a nervous breakdown, friend. You can always type another card. Now, look, you put out a bulletin, don't you, listing the different eager beavers bent on matrimony?
Yes, indeed, once every month.
Well, if I could get a hold of your latest bulletin, maybe Mr. Phillistin could spot the man he saw in that letter.
Unfortunately, the new bulletin won't be off the press at the Bixby printers for another week. Then I shall be glad to let you see one.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, don't mention it. But if you think I'm just one of those fly-by-night marriage bureaus, you're sadly mistaken. I've spent 30 years bringing together people who thought they didn't have a soulmate in the world.
Goodbye, Mr. Selby.
Well, George, looks as though this trip to Phillistin's house wasn't worth the boat ride across the lake.
Yeah, Angel. Everything neat as a pin inside there. Not a sign of violence anywhere.
Well, we don't have much to work on, do we?
Well, I thought I could get something out of Selby. That was a complete washout.
Well, George,
Yeah, Brooksy.
may I say something? I mean, as a woman.
I wouldn't have you say it any other way.
Oh. Well, did you notice Mrs. Phillistin's closets?
Like any other woman's, why?
Stuffed to overflowing with furs, lined with dozens of dresses and racks of shoes.
Look, this is no time to comment on feminine extravagance, Angel.
Yeah, but how about feminine psychology?
Huh?
Well, members of our sex just don't leave all those frills and fripperies behind, especially when we're supposed to be running off with another man.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute, Brooksy. You got something.
Mm-hmm.
Look, get to a phone.
Okay, I saw one in the living room.
Call the Wilders. If Edith doesn't want to walk over here, ask her for a quick inventory of her sister's things.
Of course. She'll know if Angela took anything with her.
How do you like that? She can't just be missing. Nothing as simple
ever is, my friend.
Hey, where did you come from?
Who are you, one of Angela's friends? It's hard to tell. Sometimes they're young, sometimes they're old.
What have you got to do with Angela?
Oh, nothing. I'm just her son.
Son?
So you see, I speak with authority. Can I get you a drink?
Well, if you're her son, aren't you at all concerned about what's happened to her since Monday?
I haven't been able to sleep one single night.
Now, that's obvious.
I have the greatest admiration for my mother and her assorted husbands. I'm Bud Kramer. I spring from Mama's #1 marriage club bargain. Are you going to be the fourth, Papa?
The name's Valentine. I'm here to see if I can find your mother.
Get out.
Hey, now, wait a minute.
I said get out. If you never find her, it'll be the best break I ever got. This house will belong to me, and I'll come into some money.
If you don't stop sticking your chin in my face, son, I'm going to have to do something about it.
Oh, it's fine to have a mother you can respect. You know, you can always help her with her letters when she decides it's time for another husband. Well, didn't you hear me? Get out of here!
Let's not be a problem, huh?
Let go of my arm.
You'd better go upstairs and go to bed. You've had a busy night, and you've been getting around today, too. Go on, sleep it off.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll sing myself to sleep with Brahms' lullaby. Or maybe I'll make it Mother McCree. Be sure to find my mother, will you? Tell her how much a little boy needs her.
George, who was that? What did he mean?
We'll get to him later. What did Edith say?
Well, it's the strangest thing, darling.
Yeah, what is?
Edith says apparently Angela didn't take a stitch of clothing with her. And you know that blue plaid dress hanging over the chair in her bedroom?
Yeah, I saw it.
Well, Walter said that was the one she wore the day he gave her the $20,000 and she disappeared.
With a towel around her or a bathing suit? Oh, no, Brooksy, this doesn't whack up at all.
Yeah, I know.
It's beginning to look more like something for homicide, not missing persons.
Well, Lieutenant Riley is just going to love us when we present him with this case.
Well, of course, we're not sure yet. Brooksy, I'm going to take one more stab at keeping this confidential.
Meaning?
A visit to Bixby Printers. I'd like to get a preview of next month's bulletin of the Friendship Club. I know Selby's bulletin hasn't come out yet, Mr. Bixby, but could I take a look at the advance proofs?
Well, I suppose I could do that for you. They're right over here.
Well, we'll have them back in the morning. We just want someone to take a look at them.
I take it, Mr. Valentine, you're from the police.
Well, let's just say I'm working with the police.
Well, okay, just so long I don't lose any time on the job. Yeah, they're right here in this file. I just had them out a couple hours ago. Selby called up and wanted something ripped out before we went to press.
Oh.
George, that would be after you talked to him.
Yeah, I know. Look, Bixby, have you got that part Selby wanted left out?
Was there a picture of a man in it?
No, as I remember it, it was the listing of a lady. She must have changed her mind. Happens all the time. Sent the picture back to Mr. Selby by messenger. But here's the copy that went with it, if you want to see it.
Yeah. Friendship Club member number 40. Young, attractive divorcee. Amiable, fun-loving, anxious to live life to the fullest. Major interests, good books, cooking, and so forth and so on.
Well, that's a dead end.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Bixby, we'll have these back to you in the morning first thing. Let's get back, Brooksy.
You know, I'm beginning to feel like a Tuxedo Lake commuter. Exclusive, George, but I'd hate to make this trip to the island every time I came home late.
Yeah, it is kind of dark, Angel. But that green light way up ahead, that's the Phillistin dock.
Say, what happens if Mr. Phillistin doesn't recognize any of these Romeos in the bulletin as Angela's boyfriend?
Well, suspecting what we do, Brooksy, we'll just have to dump the case in Lieutenant Riley's lap tomorrow morning.
We won't be giving you much to work on, except our suspicions.
And the fact that when a woman walks around with $20,000 in cash, she just naturally... Hey, Brooksy, that motorboat coming toward us.
Well, they can see us. They've got their searchlight right on us.
Well, I can't see a thing with that glare.
Turn, George, turn. They're coming right at us.
I'm trying. What's the matter with you? Oh, can't you see it? Brooksy!
May 31st, 1948. Let George Do It on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 75 years ago today follows these messages from your favorite radio station. Just going to take a minute here to tell you about the big savings going on now, the clearance sale at mypillow.com. And you know, I've talked about how in my office I have a pair of my slippers, and they're really comfortable, and they're on clearance right now. The mypillow.com slippers, $25 a pair, limit 10. And I would buy 3 or 4 more pairs. Unfortunately, they're out of my size. They also have sheets, pillowcases, clothing items, all on special right now. Go to mypillow.com, click on the clearance tab at the top of the page, use my promo code Wyatt, or call 1-800-928-4715. Limited sizes remaining in the MyPillow slippers, limited colors on other items. mypillow.com, clearance tab, promo code Wyatt, 1-800-928-4715. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite station. We're listening to an episode of Let George Do It, broadcast on the west coast of the U.S. on Monday, May 31st, 1948. In the newspapers of that Monday, 75 years ago, these were some of the headlines. The war-built town of Vanport, Oregon, shattered by a wall of water that burst from the flooding Columbia River yesterday. An unknown number of the town's 18,700 residents drowned. Whole apartment units broken and piled like kindling against the one wall of the enclosed low-lying community. The Army Corps of Engineers said the ground level of the town was 15 feet below the river level, but the depth of the water in the town not known immediately. It appeared to have risen to the level of the river, according to witnesses. President Truman's Western speaking tour began to take on the form of a test between those who don't and those who do want Truman to become the Democrat presidential nominee. The president leaves Washington Thursday night for a Western swing, which he will make 5 major speeches and any number of informal appearances. A lot of pains have been taken at the White House toward making sure that everything runs smoothly and that Truman is presented to his fellow Americans in the best possible light. Meanwhile, before departing, President Truman laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier during Memorial Day activities at the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. As Arab troops began forming yesterday for an apparent drive on Tel Aviv, an Israeli government spokesman said the Arab Legion planned to use gas in the battle in Jerusalem. The Jewish spokesman made the charge in Tel Aviv. Dispatches from Jerusalem did not confirm the charge. The spokesman said, however, the Jews have intercepted an order of the Transjordan Arab League to use bombs, shells, and gas in an attack on Jerusalem's new city. Associated Press correspondent Joseph C. Goodwin with the Arab League Legion in central Palestine said Allied Arab forces appeared grouping for the Battle of Tel Aviv. Blank protest votes against Czechoslovakia's communist-led government's single parliamentary election ticket total more than 500,000 last night, with more than half the votes counted. However, these returns announced at midnight gave Premier Klement Gottwald People's Democracy government the majority of yes votes it demanded. There are slightly more than 8 million registered voters in Czechoslovakia. A 58-year-old Chicago inventor claimed last night to have perfected a deadly device eliminating the deadly effects of carbon monoxide. J.A. Fenn said he locked himself up with a rabbit for company in a garage with the motor of his car running for 50 minutes without ill effects, thanks to his invention of vaporizer. Everything went calmly until Franklin D. Roosevelt came along. One clerk, Ira R.T. Smith, could open every sack of mail the president got. And then came the radio and Franklin D., according to Smith, who's just retired after 51 years as presidential mail opener. Franklin D. said, "Tell me your troubles," and my, how they did. Today, the one-man mail opener was gone forever. It now takes a steady 22 people, and sometimes the mail is so heavy, another 50 people are brought in to help. In Memphis, Mrs. A.V. Willens heard a thumping inside a metal tub hanging from a nail on the back porch. Investigating, she found her pet bantam making herself comfortable on 7 eggs. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Monday, May 31st, 1948, on your radio. Let George Do It, starring Bob Bailey and Virginia-Gregg. We'll hear the conclusion following these messages. You're listening to a Wednesday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Tomorrow, an episode of radio's outstanding theater of thrilled suspense from 70 years ago, June 1st, 1953, A Vision of Death, starring Ronald Colman. An interesting story about a couple with a nightclub mind-reading act who are amazed to find they no longer need their codes. They really can read minds. That's on Thursday's Classic Radio Theater. And by the way, on Friday, Jack Benny on Suspense, A Good and Faithful Servant. We'll tell you about that tomorrow. But right now, the conclusion. And anytime, by the way, you can hear these shows at classicradio.stream or on our podcast. Now, the conclusion of Let George Do It. 75 years ago, May 31st, 1948, The Island in the Lake.
And now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. A small outboard motorboat heading toward the island in Tuxedo Lake. Suddenly, out of the darkness roars a powerful motorboat, its searchlight blinding George and Claire. A sudden, terrifying crash as the boat upsets, leaving its shaken occupants to struggle ashore. And now, a few minutes later, in front of the fireplace in the Phillistin home, George and Claire are trying to puzzle out just what they might have stumbled on in this strange case of Angela Phillistin. Angela, still married but corresponding with a matrimonial club, and now missing for days.
Oh, George, this fire feels wonderful.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, there's one thing sure. Whoever just tried to feed us to the fish is right here on Tuxedo Lake.
Yeah, but what is it we know that we don't know we know?
Oh, Brooksy, at this point, I don't know from nothing. The 3 people who might possibly want us out of the way are right here on this island. Bud Kramer, Angela's son, who hates his own mother.
Mr. Phillistin, who got such a raw deal from Angela the one and only time he used the services of the Friendship Club.
Yeah, that's right. And Sister Edith, who said she'd do anything to keep a breath of scandal from the swank shores of Tuxedo Island.
All this doesn't exactly give you a comfortable feeling, does it?
Brooksy, before we see Lieutenant Riley in the morning, we're going to check every boat tied up around this lake. Hey, come here, Brooksy.
Huh? George, the Phillistin boat.
Yeah, the Angela. Tied up right here in front of the house, as innocent as you please. And look at this big dent right here on her nose. All the paint scraped off.
Well, it looks more and more like it has to be one of those 3.
Yeah.
Hey,
What the?
there's somebody out there in the lake, George.
Oh, what a night. Just hope whoever was using this boat tonight left the keys in it.
Valentine, I've told you, I went into the village to celebrate.
Sounds phony to me, Bud.
What have you got to celebrate with your mother missing?
Well, that's what I was celebrating.
Let's skip that routine.
I was feeling pretty good, so I thought I'd swim across the lake.
Clothes and all?
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Suddenly I had to prove to myself that I was a reasonable facsimile of a man.
Yeah.
Guess I'm not in very good shape.
How about this version, Bud? You tied up the Angela after you plowed into us, and you were swimming away from the island toward the shore.
Then you'd be in the clear.
I don't know what you 2 are talking about.
We'll see about that later. Now, you go upstairs to your room and stay there.
Look, you can't order me around.
I said go to your room.
Yeah, go to your room, buddy. When I was a kid, whenever I was in the way, Angela would say, "Go to your room, buddy." My adoring mother. fun-loving, anxious to live life to the fullest. Oh, where's my wondering mother tonight?
I can't help feeling sorry for that boy, George.
To tell you the truth, I wasn't listening to him very hard.
What?
These red flagstones in front of the fireplace.
Yeah, what about them?
Red stains on red flagstones wouldn't show up very clearly ordinarily, but the light of the fire brings them out.
Huh?
Look at them, Brooksy.
Is that blood?
Could be. This might be the sign of violence we didn't find when we went over this place before.
Well, if you're right, Lieutenant Riley will certainly have something to work on when we come back here in the morning.
And if I'm right, Brooksy, it means Angela Phillistin was murdered.
All right, Valentine. Where are these blood stains you dragged me out here to see?
But, George, they're gone.
Wait a minute, what is this? Someone scrubbed these flagstones clean during the night.
You don't say.
Oh, what a metal midget I turned out to be. I should have stayed right here while you went back to town, Brooksy.
But how could anybody know what we found?
Oh, well, at least I'm bright enough to know the answer to that one. Somebody knew every move we made last night.
Ah, stop sounding like a bee picture. Next, you'll be talking about trap doors and hidden passages.
Oh, that's not fair, Lieutenant Riley.
I get dragged out of bed. I bring the best men in the department out here with me. They dredge the lake, and all they're coming up with is some undernourished trout.
All right, Riley. Give me a chance to think, will you?
Hayes here. Look at him. One of the best men in our lab, crawling around on his knees like a charwoman, looking for something that isn't here.
I'll be through here in a minute, Lieutenant.
Oh, I can't thank you enough for that bracing, invigorating trip across the lake, Valentine, but I've got better things to do with my time.
Lieutenant, somebody tried to run us down on the lake last night, and he was using Phillistin's boat.
Yeah.
Lieutenant.
Yeah, what is it, Hayes?
These red particles between the cracks in the floor here. They might mean something.
All right, be careful with those, Hayes. Very careful.
Got them in this bottle. You want to initial the label, Lieutenant, in case we ever need it for evidence?
Yeah, sure. But just remember this, Valentine. If this proves to be ketchup from the weenie roast they had in this fireplace, I'll... So help me, I'll do it!
What do you say we wait and see, Lieutenant? It may not be ketchup at all. Just barbecue sauce. The kind that's too hot to handle.
Well, Valentine was right. It was blood, all right. Human blood.
Angela's? I don't understand. Who'd want to kill her?
Oh, I can't believe it.
We found it's the same blood type as your sister's, Mrs. Wilder.
Oh, no.
Now, that's not going to help at all, Mrs. Wilder.
Oh, I know I may have sounded selfish and petty, just thinking of the scandal Angela might cause, but now that it looks as though my sister was murdered, none of that matters.
All right, folks, all right. Let's settle down and do some straight talking, huh? Mr. Phillistin.
Yes, Lieutenant.
Well, this is the way it shapes up. Your wife never left the island. If she did, she was carried out after she was murdered in front of that fireplace. And we'll find the body if we have to dig up every inch around Tuxedo Lake.
Lieutenant, I admit I wanted to hate Angela when I found out what she was doing. But I'll give everything I own to find the man who killed her.
Mr. Valentine, you were trying to track down the man Angela was corresponding with. What did you find out at that friendship club?
I did have some pictures for Mr. Phillistin to identify. But they're all at the bottom of the lake now.
Yes, very convenient.
About the $20,000, Mr. Phillistin, that you were supposed to have given your wife.
No, what about it?
We checked into all of your accounts. There's no record of any withdrawal like that.
Well, I took that money out of a safe deposit box.
Well, that's not where most people keep that much money, is it, Mr. Phillistin?
Oh, no, but being in the building game, it pays to be able to put your hands on ready cash.
All right, that's your story.
Oh, I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. Maybe it was foolish to resort to a marriage club, but I was lonely. She never brought me any happiness, but I never hurt Angela.
Well, we're going to stay right here at headquarters because we got a lot of things to talk about. I'm still checking on Bud Kramer's story. All he does is prattle about his amiable, fun-loving mother.
Oh, he's still at it, huh? Look, Brooksy.
Yes, George.
You stick right here. Lieutenant, you don't mind if I duck out for a few minutes, do you?
Oh, I won't waste time asking you why.
Oh, but I'll tell you. There's a little angle to this case I overlooked, but I'm going to take care of it right now. Come on, Selby, give. You were holding out on me before, weren't you?
Well, I answered all of your questions to the best of my knowledge.
You mean you just told me as much as you thought I should know. But now you got to open up, Selby. This is a murder case, and the police are in on it.
Oh, dear.
Well, come on, give.
All right. You understand, I had to think of my business, what it might sound like if Angela's disappearance ever got into the papers. You know
Never mind that, Cupid. Get to the point.
Yes, of course. I suppose I should have told you that Angela was the second wife of Walter Phillistin met through the Friendship Club.
Well, surprise.
That's the truth.
Some names, Selby, some facts.
Well, the name of Phillistin's first wife was Frida Merritt. She was a widow, pretty well off.
Yeah?
They were married 5 years ago, and then she...
Then what?
She was out alone fishing about 2 years ago. Her boat turned over, and she was drowned. But it was an accident, Mr. Valentine. The police said it was.
Uh-huh. Better get your hat, Selby.
Why, where are we going?
Police headquarters. I want you to repeat that story to Lieutenant Riley. I think we found the answer to just what's been happening over there on Tuxedo Island.
Well, thanks, Mr. Selby. Now, what about this, Phillistin?
I suppose I should have known this would have come out anyway.
Why didn't you tell us before that you got your first wife through Shelby's Friendship Club?
Yes, you made us believe you were just a lonely man. And that was the first time you ever did anything like that.
Does any man ever want to admit that he was played for a fool twice?
What's that supposed to mean?
Frida and I weren't too happy after a while.
And she died. Well, believe me, we're going to check into that accident, and much more thoroughly this time, now that we know what we're looking for.
That was an accident.
And what about Angela?
Oh, I don't know what happened to Angela after I gave her the $20,000.
Of which we find no record. I'm sorry, Mr. Phillistin, but I had to tell them what I knew.
Oh, leave me alone.
Oh, I do hope there'll be as little mention of the Friendship Club as possible in this affair.
Is that all you've got to worry about, Mr. Selby?
Of course, Miss Brooks. I've spent years and years building up a...
Okay, Selby, okay. You can beat it now. We'll call you when we need you.
Yes, Lieutenant. Of course.
Just a minute, Lieutenant.
Huh?
Is it your usual practice to let a murderer walk out of your office?
What are you talking about?
You mean Selby?
What kind of a joke is this supposed to be? I told you all I knew.
Let me in on this, Valentine.
Me too.
I'd certainly like to know what you're talking about.
You had me on the hook for a long time, Selby, until I started remembering a few things.
Lieutenant, he doesn't know what he's saying.
Well, suppose we listen anyway.
And stop squirming, Mr. Lonely Hearts. You can't talk your way out of this. It's there in black and white.
Please, Mr. Valentine, tell us what you know.
When I first walked into your office, Selby, you said you thought Mrs. Phillistin was happily married.
Well, yes.
You said you even took a card out of the file and tore it up.
That's right.
But then why did you have her name listed in your new bulletin as a likely marriage prospect?
That's a lie.
Friendship Club member number 40, young, attractive divorcee, amiable, fun-loving, anxious to live life to the fullest.
Of course. That was a description of Angela. We never thought of it because we were looking for a man.
Those are the same words her son keeps repeating like a drunken parrot.
Words he could never forget, because they were the ones Angela always used when she was looking for a new husband.
That's the same way she described herself in the ad I answered.
Lieutenant, you don't
Save
believe...
it, Cupid. You just ran your business too well. And that's what's going to hang you.
George, I still don't understand what reason Selby had for killing Angela.
Because Cupid got double-crossed, Angel.
Double-crossed?
Yep. According to Riley, Selby had quite a little racket on the side. Like Angela, for instance.
Oh?
He saw she was getting restless with a man so much older than herself.
I see. So why not get a nice fat settlement from the old boy? The Friendship Club can always come up with a new husband.
They would have split that $20,000, Brooksy. But when she said, no go, and if you do anything about it, I'll go to the police, he killed her and buried her body.
Selby didn't miss a trick, did he? Even to using Phillistin's boat to run us down.
Well, he knew what the police would think when they learned about how he married the first Mrs. Phillistin and how she died. Which, by the way, was an accident.
Oh, darling, I'm so glad. That we met in a nice, normal way.
Oh, yeah. A USO canteen. Yeah, I remember. You were one of the hostesses.
Yeah.
You walked up and said demurely, "What about it, soldier? Dance?"
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it beautiful?
Yeah. And then I said...
And that was that. After all, no girl could resist such a pretty compliment.
Next week, when you tune our way for another adventure of George Valentine, you'll hear...
Oh, Mr. Dimmick. What was that?
One of the many voices of darkness that echo through the tunnel of love.
Now, calm yourself, Claire.
that up ahead?
Yeah, what is that dim light, Timmy? Seems to be coming from the wall of the tunnel.
It looks like a man. Maybe he's in trouble. You better hurry.
Patience. We can travel only as fast as the water flows through the tunnel. It's like fate carrying us.
That man's got a gun in his hand.
And pointed right at us. Down on the boat, everybody. That guy means business.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West. Let George Do It stars Robert Bailey as George with Frances Robinson as Claire. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Tonight's story was written by David Victor and Herbert Little Jr. and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Irene Tedrow as Edith, Paul McVeigh as Walter, Jack Edwards as Bud, Joe Forte as Selby, and Stanley Farrar as Bixby. The music is composed and conducted by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston.
Only broadcast on the west coast of the United States, Let George Do It gave listeners a good idea of what Bob Bailey could do in the role of a private investigator. That's why he was so strongly and highly regarded when he became Johnny Dollar, in yours truly, Johnny Dollar, from 1956 until 1960. Let George Do It, May 31st, 1948, on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Thank this station, support their advertisers, their kindness and courtesy allow us to be with you each and every time we roll around here on your favorite station. Miss a day, you don't have to miss a show. All of our shows are available on demand at classicradio.stream. You can stream our shows on demand. There's a list of sites that have our shows available via podcast. You can search Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on almost any podcast app and find us. You can also buy me a copy there. The Buy Me a Coffee money goes toward helping us acquire additional Classic Radio Theater productions. We've acquired a whole new run of Gunsmoke. You'll be hearing those coming up soon here too. And helping us maintain our distribution channels so we can keep coming to you on your favorite station. And please tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.